morning we're going to be tying up a great streamer pattern called the Mickey fin. I'm going to go ahead and start a couple of eye lengths back behind the eye of the hook, and we're just going to try to lay a pretty smooth thread base down here. Try to keep the wraps somewhat close, but they don't absolutely have to be touching here. And we're just going to take this back to the bend of the hook. So it's a really fantastic pattern, and it's been around for a long time. It's fun to tie, and it's a good looking fly. We'll go ahead and snip off our tag end right about there. Then again, I'm going to move back up towards the front. The one thing that I'm really going to try to do as much as I possibly can here is to try to keep an even body all the way through here. So we're going to have a multicolor wing on the top. The body's going to be silver, very, very silver. So the first thing we're going to tie in is just going to be some ribbing, and I've got some French oval silver. And for the most part, I'm going to want this to be underneath the shank of the hook, and so we'll accomplish that just by kind of getting it attached here to start with a couple of thread wraps. And then I'm going to kind of slowly, as I work my way back again, trying to keep an even body here, let my thread kind of pull that material until it starts pulling it underneath the bottom. And that's kind of where it's located right now. This is a size 8 extra, probably 4x long streamer hook. So this is a big old honking hook. So you've got a lot of territory that you've got to travel. So once I've got that there, I'm actually going to try to manhandle this tinsel a little bit, and you'll see that I'm able to do that and basically rotate so that all of it is now going along the bottom of the shank of our hook. And from there we're just going to travel again, taking somewhat touching turning wraps, moving back up towards where we tied that tinsel in originally, or that ribbing. Once I get about there, I'm going to go ahead and turn my vise, grab my scissors, cut that off fairly close. Turn that back around so it's facing in a way that hopefully you'll be able to see it. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to tie in some Mylar tinsel. And I am going to tie, this is just a medium size, and I'm going to tie this with the gold side facing me, just because I know from past experience that if I tie it in with the gold side facing me, when I actually start doing the wrapping on the material, it's going to be wrapping on the silver side, and that's the side that we want. So I'm getting that started. I just pulled it back a little bit, and once again we're just going to travel down the length of the hook here. So the main part of being patient here is just knowing how far you've got to travel down the shank of the hook. So I'm just going to take this right back to where I want that kind of abdomen to start. I don't even know if you call it an abdomen here, because it's pretty much the entire length of the shank of the hook here. And then we're just going to travel back up towards the front again. So hopefully at this point we've got our silver Mylar tied in, tinsel. We've got our gold or silver oval ribbing material tied in. Come back up here just to behind the eye, leaving a couple of eye lengths behind. I'm going to throw in a whip finish here just really quick, and you'll see that I do that a few times with this one because I do want to use the rotary feature on my vise, and this just helps me keep that thread from deciding it wants to wrap itself up the shank of the hook as I do the spinning. So I'll throw that in my bobbin cradle over here that you can't see, but you can see the effect of it, which is exactly what we want, which is I can be pretty much hands-free. I'm going to hold my Mylar tinsel straight up in the air, just like that. And we're going to make sure we get that first nice turn right around the base. And from there, I'm just going to kind of keep this on an angle as I rotate and move my way up the shank of the hook, trying to not have any of the black thread show through, but just wanting enough overlapping that so that it doesn't show through, but that we keep a nice even kind of body on this. This was one of those times, one of many times, where that rotating vise is really helpful, because it really helps you get these nice and even. So once I've got that up here near the front, I'll go ahead and release my bobbin from the cradle. I'll tighten it up, keeping my tension on that tinsel, that Mylar, because if I don't, it will most certainly come unwound and we'll just redo what we just did. So I'm just going to take a few wraps here over the top of that tinsel just to secure and lock it into place. I'll take a wrap or two on the other side. From there, I should be able to come right in and we'll clip that off fairly close. And we're going to do what we did before. So this is just a repeat. I'm going to once again throw in another whip finish so I can put my bobbin, my thread on my bobbin cradle here. So I don't need to build up bulk here. I'm just really putting a half hitch in here. And I like to use the half hitch tool or the whip finisher because it just helps me make sure that I get that knot exactly where I want it. So once again, I've got my thread hanging here on my bobbin cradle. Now I've got a hold of my oval tinsel. And I'm going to keep kind of about the same angle as I work my way up. I don't want to be shifting this around too much, because if you keep it on the right angle, it's going to give you a pretty much consistent spiral. As you can see, they're fairly open wraps as we move up towards the eye of the hook. So here we are at the eye. We're going to tighten up our thread, get it off of our bobbin cradle. Just going to take a couple of wraps over the top of my tinsel to hold it in place, because it also will come unwound very easily if I let go of it. Take another thread wrap or two here. And you can see we've got a wonderful silver body here. We'll go ahead and clip this off fairly close. I always say fairly close, but it's about as close as I can get it. I'm just going to cut myself off a chunk of this fluorescent yellow. Just kind of get it straightened out. Try to get rid of anything that looks like it's too long. And once I have that about where I want it, I'm going to want this to be about the length of the shank of the hook. So just right back to that bend. Going to give it a nice pinch wrap here. I'll just take a loose wrap over the top of it just to make sure I've got it nice and secure down. And we'll just take a couple of thread wraps over the top of the material. From there, I'm just going to come in with my scissors. We're going to go ahead and cut out the balance. So just to make this pattern a little bit more stout, I'm going to go ahead and take some super glue or some Zment here and just put it right on those thread wraps and that wool that we just tied in. Looks like it's time for me to get more Zment because it's getting really stringy here. I'll just go ahead and take some wraps right through that Zment, that super glue. We're going to have a pretty pronounced head here, but I still have a couple more layers to tie in, so I don't want to get too carried away with too many thread wraps. So from there we're going to go ahead and turn to more of a red color for the middle section. And we'll do similar to what we did before, where we try to get rid of any kind of outside stringy kind of pieces. I'm going to want this to be the exact same length as that yellow that we tied in initially. We'll hold that on the top of our hook shank here, and we're going to just go ahead and secure it down just like we did with the yellow. I'm just going to take a few thread wraps to make sure I've got it locked and held in place. And from there, we'll just come in with our scissors again, and we'll cut this one off close too. We'll throw ourselves down a little bit more of the Zappa gap here. And then we'll just take some, holding everything kind of in place, some thread wraps right through that Zappa gap. I'll take this down to the eye because I do want to start building up that head a little bit, and we're about ready to put on our last layer here. So I'll take that back up to where we tied in the red and the yellow. So the last batch is going to be that same yellow, so we're just sandwiching that red. We're going to set that right on top of everything else. Take a nice loose wrap around here just to keep it nice and centered on the top of the shank of our hook. And we'll go ahead and take a few thread wraps to lock that down. With that in place, we'll go ahead and one last time come in with our scissors to cut that off close. Once we get it about this far, we're just going to go ahead and finish securing this down, building ourselves up a little bit of a head. That's why you're going to want to cut some of those first bunches off fairly close. So a couple of things that we're doing here. One is we are building the head, but we're also covering up the very last bit of those butt ends of the wool that we've tied on the top. Once I've got that taken care of, I'm going to go ahead and move my thread more up towards the back end here, and we'll do a final whip finish on it. And I'm going to coat this head with UV resin. Just makes it get that shiny look a little bit easier. So I'm not too worried about taking 100 wraps here with my whip finisher, because this is all going to be sitting underneath some UV resin. So we'll get that tied off, and then we will cut that thread with the back end of our whip finisher. So from here, we're just going to go ahead and grab our trusty sewing pen that I like to use for varnishing and for gluing. And we're just going to make sure that we get a nice coat of UV resin. Try to keep it on those thread wraps as much as you possibly can. But we're going to want this to go all the way around to the underside of our fly here. Sometimes I'll hang that upside down and let gravity give me a hand in terms of pulling it down. But once I've got that UV resin on, which you can see we've got that nice kind of shiny shell, we'll just hit it with our UV torch. So here we have it, the Mickey fin finished now. Like I said, a great streamer pattern. It's a lot of fun to tie. I love that silver underbody with the silver ribbing, and then we've got that nice alternating fluorescent yellow and red wing going over the top of it, as well as that nice shiny head to finish it off. So throw yourself a hook in your vise and give this one a shot.